Welcome, everyone, to Creators Corner. My name is Chris Barrows here with the Tabletop Express, and I'm glad you could join us here. It's 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and I am just excited to be talking with Helaina Cappel of Kids Table Board Gaming. And Helaina, first and foremost, thank you for taking time to join me this evening.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really excited for it.
Well, one of the things I'm very excited about, and I mentioned this to you previously, is I obviously have some familiarity with the games, and in particular the point that my son loves fossils. So every time I talk to someone who is one of the reasons a game exists, whether they're the designer, publisher, whatever it may be, that's always fun for me. But also, as I do Creators Corner, one of my favorite parts of that is to go on that journey. And to kind of go on that journey with you, I'd love to know, what's your origin story in board games? When was it that you became really interested in board games, be it as a kid or an experience later on?
Well, as a kid, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't stand games. My parents, who were separated, both enjoyed them very much and made me play with them. But when I'm talking games, I'm talking like Monopoly and Sorry and
Right.
Candyland and Chutes and Ladders and all of that stuff. And I didn't like them. So I thought I just didn't like games. They would come out during rainy days at recess at school, and I would be sitting at my desk doing something by myself while everyone else played games, because I just thought, I don't like these things. When I met my husband, he was very interested in playing games, and he liked more strategic games. And he came home one day with this game, Catan, as everybody usually in our age category. He came home with Catan, and he's like, let's just try it. I'm like, I don't like games. I'm not going to like this. And one game in, and I realized I could have some say in the things that I do when I'm doing them, that wasn't my experience as a kid. So the first year that we had that game, I think that we played it probably about 500 times. Wow. And yeah, it was every single night, almost every single night. We were at our in-laws' house, and just that's what we did every single night. Obviously, this was before children. And around that time, he started bringing other games home. I think the next one was Carcassonne and Stone Age, and like all of those classic games. And we really started getting into them. Always went back to Catan, but really started getting into them. And then I thought to myself, I guess I'm a gamer. And we started digging further into games, more strategy. Endeavor very, very quickly became a favorite of mine. Caylus is probably my top game. It's so boring, but it's so good. It's so good. I have the best time when I play that game. So I like Euro strategies, and I will be forever one of those gamers.
And I imagine, because I know you're an educator, that when you play games, and when you think about the designing of games, that there was almost this natural inclination, because as part of your story, as I continued to read more and more about it, is the introduction of kids table board gaming came out of the fact that you wanted to play games with your kids, and maybe some play games that maybe had a little bit more strategy, but were still appropriate, but at the same time still great for a gamer. You didn't want it to bore them. What is that origin story a little bit, and how did you kind of come to the decision to actually do kids table board gaming? Because it is a step forward, and obviously it's turned into a lot of games now for you.
It has, shockingly, it has. So when my oldest son was 3, we started getting games for him and thinking, we're gamers now. Let's make our child a gamer. And I didn't know any better at the time. Like, I started introducing him to the same old boring games that I was playing as a kid that I didn't enjoy. I don't know why I did that, but there were some other choices, but those were the ones that were readily on the shelf. So I remember thinking to myself, playing Chutes and Ladders one day, that the game was never going to end. And he couldn't see that going up and coming down and going up and coming down, it was just like a cycle, and it was never ending, and it was boring. And you know, for him it was great because he was learning to take turns and you know, roll the dice. I think it's dice, I don't even remember. uh to roll the dice. So, you know, for a very, very beginner game, no problem. But I didn't enjoy myself, and I was with spending time with my child. I wanted to enjoy myself as well. Around this time, my husband had started designing games himself, and he designed a game called Shoe Tree, and it was a fantastic game. All of our friends and our family loved it. It was abstract, and he was not ready to take an abstract game to a publisher to have published. So I said to him, you know what? Okay, like, why don't we think about what the mechanisms are and how that could work as possibly a game with a theme on it. And I came up with Food Fighters, and that was our first game. And it turned out to be that we ended up designing the game together, because even though Shoe Tree had already been made, putting this theme on it completely changed the game. And so we worked together on it. And it came time to start showing it to publishers. And then we were so ingrained in it, and we were playing with our own child. I said, you know, maybe I'll just publish the game. We'll take it to Kickstarter, and I'll just publish the game. Like, no problem. I have a full-time job as a teacher, and I'm a full-time parent. Why don't I just add something else to the mix? So we did this in July of, I don't know, 7 years ago. And it was the worst month of my life. Kickstarter for the first time is really, really hard. It's still hard at the 10th time, but the first time is really difficult. We funded. It took us an entire month to get to $26,000 Canadian, or whatever that was at the time. And the make a long story short, the whole idea was to make games for kids that kids can play that adults enjoy. And so Food Fighters is one of those games. It sort of has a really unique thing where you can play without any strategy, but as you're playing, as a newer player, somebody who has not really played a strategy game, or a younger player starts learning that there are optimal moves. And, you know, if I do this, then that will happen. But if I do that, then this will happen. And then all of a sudden, your child or this brand new gamer is playing a game where they are actually thinking about what they should be doing, instead of just like rolling the dice and going with it. And so KTBG, or Kids Table, was born. And because that to us at the time was such a success, we figured that the thing for us to do was maybe to go ahead and try to make these games where adults would enjoy playing, and kids could have fun playing it too, and could strategize. And it turns out we do that really well.
Yeah, and the thing is, I was thinking about this because I was just thinking about the fact of the games you've created, and on your site, I mean, anyone can find this, but what I love is your motto is making casual games for serious gamers and serious games for casual gamers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love the idea of just, for me, and a big reason I always say that I have a channel is because I want to talk about games in a way that gets people to put a game on the table. So I mean, there was this natural connection. I had to have have one of you on. But what's really cool to me too is that, you know, this is a team effort. You've got designer and illustrator skill sets between the both of you, and I just think it's really cool to see kind of a duo go to work. And really, you've been a duo for most of this, have you not? I mean, the work has fallen mostly on both of you to this point.
Absolutely. Until about a year and a half ago, it's just been the two of us, and we're doing everything starting from designing the game, which, I mean, we do publish other people's games, but designing to development to Josh, my husband, does all of the art direction and the graphic design himself. To taking it from that to running Kickstarter campaigns, to fulfillment, to other logistics, to bringing it to retail. So we start the project from the beginning and see it to the end.
And the interesting to me though is you're also really picky, it seems like, about the games you want to bring on.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I've looked at the assortment of games, one, all very well reviewed, first and foremost, as I looked across kind of the palette of games, but you've got a different group, different sets of designers, and your husband may end up doing illustration or art or other things, that you're getting a wide range of people. So you're giving people an opportunity, which I imagine is somewhat fulfilling, but it's also a very big business decision in the sense of you're going to go work to put something on Kickstarter. You're going to take the time to make sure this is the right fit
Mm-hmm.
for what you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to publish. What's the process you actually go through, though, to kind of think about that and make that right decision?
We have two brands. So we have the family brand, and we have Strategy Games, which is the Burnt Island version of us. So what's really nice is that when we have someone pitch to us, it's either way too simple or too complex for KTBG, which makes it easy because we can either say no or say, you know what, we really like this game, but why don't we think about it in terms of our strategy game line? And we'll look at it through a Burnt Island lens. It is very, very difficult for us to find strategy games that can appeal to adults and gamers, and gamers who like to play lighter games, because if you're into playing very heavy euros, you're not going to be completely fulfilled by the KTBG games. But what we're looking for is for someone who likes to play games that will enjoy it, and their children or someone who's new can get into it as well. That's not an easy task. And so I get, I don't know, hundreds of submissions every year, and typically within the first couple of seconds watching a video or looking at a sell sheet, I'll know if the game is for us. And usually, like I said, they're either just way too simple for us or way too strategic that it doesn't work for the KTBG line. That's also the reason I think that we've been able to stay small and have a small team. We do have someone else working with us now, Sean, who's he's amazing, and he does everything for us, and with us. But what we're looking at is the type of game where we have to be able to say, I'm going to sit down just with the adults and play this game now, and I have to enjoy it. And then I have to be able to see whether or not I can take out some part of the game to make it for very young children, or if someone who's a little bit older that is just learning how to play strategy can play that game. So
and you have testers in your house in the sense too, with having children. So yeah. I'm sure that helps on the kids side of things. I mean, I can say, if I put a game in front of my son, I know pretty quickly if it's going to work or not, and he's able to pay attention. So you've got two in a good age range now that they're essentially some good play testers for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So one is just turning 12 and the other one's 9. The 12-year-old is basically done with playing prototypes. He just wants to play a game. That's all he says. I just want to play the game. And the other one is like becoming a game designer himself, and he loves dabbling and helping us fix games, or making suggestions that sometimes make it into the games, which is really great. But he has all these amazing ideas about other games that he wants us to publish. And right now he's actually designing a game with my husband and my other son. And it's a really good game. I'm not sure I'm going to publish it, but somebody will. It's really good.
I love, though, that it's turned into, I think it's just cool to see it's turned into this family affair of sorts. And because we talk about, I think people as a whole talk about, oh, be good, get them off. It's an overused phrase, but let's get them off the computer and like get them to play a game, right? And I think it's changed what that means. I think it's a little bit easier now because we've got more options. It's not like you're making them play shoot, like you said, shoots and ladders. I told this story before, but my son, someone tried to get him to play that when he was like 6, and he's like, "This is boring."
Yeah,
he was used to other stuff.
Yeah.
But you've made some. Again, you've designed. You have brought in. When it comes down to it, do you enjoy any particular aspect more, or is it just kind of? It really all depends on what you're working on or what that game may be.
You know what? Well, I don't think I would ever design a game by myself. I have good ideas, but I enjoy the interactions with someone else. And for me, it's hard to make decisions for myself about whether or not I think something is going to work, and bouncing those ideas off of someone else is just really, really helpful. I don't love designing games. I actually don't. I like development. I also don't love development. For me, I've always wanted to run a business. I don't know what it is. Well, I do know what it is. I come from a long line of business people, and I think being a teacher has been wonderful, and I really, really love it. But it always felt like I needed something else as well in my life in terms of what I did for work. So I've always wanted to run my own business, and this amazing opportunity came up. We made the opportunity for this to happen, but this wonderful opportunity came up, and I really enjoy the interactions that I'm having with people in the industry. I love the puzzle of making the game from scratch to retail and everything in between. And I love when everything just fits right in. And sometimes I even love it when it doesn't fit, because it's such a nice challenge for me to be trying to do something new. So I'm definitely the business end of things. But also, like, I'm a really creative person. I think a lot of teachers are. And so that development piece, that design piece it's always going to be there for me.
Yeah. And I have to ask, because I've had a few other educators and I've sensed this fantastic trend along the way that educators do really great things overall in board gaming, because one, they sense the value of board games and the fact that board games teach really essential skills to children, and I'd argue adults who need it just as much. Which I've learned more and more in this past year. So as an educator, do you bring games into kind of the idea of this can be in the classroom, or that this is an educational tool on top of the fun?
It's really interesting, but because even before I knew that I was a gamer and I enjoyed games, I was always gamifying my classroom. I'm in my 19th year of teaching. That's so hard to say. I'm in my 19th year of teaching, and I look at my first few years of teaching kids like history and geography, and I always felt like I needed to make it a game, because kids just learn better that way. You become immersed in something, and then all of a sudden it becomes part of you, not just something somebody poured into your head. Right. So I think even early on in my teaching, games were there, and I didn't even really think about that aspect of it very much. But when I did start getting into games and then, doing some dabbling in designing and stuff, they were always in my classroom. And for several years, I was teaching grade 7 and 8 math and science. And I would say that 3 or 4 of the years I was teaching, almost every single unit I did was based in some game or in many games, and how they tackle, I don't know, something like probability or percent and fractions and that sort of thing. So they've just always been there, and I see the value in them, not just for academics, but also for social interactions. I have kids who I work with now who I'm still teaching 7th and 8th grade, but the students I have right now have mild intellectual disabilities. And so they are learning to be people and humans and going into society. Like they're going to high school next year. So I am trying to teach them how to do that. And a very good way to do that is to teach them how to take turns and teach them how to close their mouth when it's someone else is talking, and just things that you wouldn't necessarily think are happening while you're playing a game, they're happening. And it's very interesting watching my students take all of this in and then actually having a conversation with them about, did you notice that you did this when that person did this? And they realize, oh, I actually was being respectful to this person while they were talking. I was just listening to what they were going to do on their turn. And I can do that. I can control myself in that way. So, games are just a phenomenal teaching tool. And I'll have you know that from the beginning of time, I have never brought in an educational game to my classroom because they're so bad. They're so bad.
I will say there's some fun games that I think have that STEM base to them, but I also wouldn't call them, like you said, I wouldn't call them those educational games. There's a difference.
That's right. So the thing, when you are a teacher and you want to bring games into your classroom, you have to be really good at picking the games that will have the things in them that you're teaching about. So for example, one of the first games we were talking about this earlier before we went on air. One of the first games I ever played, strategy games I ever played, was Catan, and bringing that into my class, students love that game. It's really easy to learn and they can get right into it. But I mentioned talking about percents and fractions and decimals and looking at the entire deck of development cards, and talking about, I picked 3 out and all of them were soldiers. How much of this deck do you think there are soldiers? And they know how to play the game already, so they're very familiar with all of the different elements of the game. And so you could just choose anything and do that with any game. So
no, it is true. And I will say, I always go, I can't now, it's something in mind, but there was the one game that for some reason my son was obsessed with when he was younger. Dr. Eureka, where you're trying to fill in the flasks.
Yeah.
And it very easily applied, but they didn't think, my son never felt like he was playing a game. Because like, the ball fell out. Let me go grab it. Oh, I got to get this quick. And they never thinking about it because it's such a rapid paced situation. And I do think about a lot of games out there, even ones where you're thinking about taking, luck. Quacks of Quellenberg comes to mind. You can
probability. It's fantastic. Yep.
So for me, though, what is really fascinating is, again, as I note, I just want to give a shout out to you and all the educators out there, that it's been obviously a challenging year. And I think educators have just done a tremendous job with all of this. And educators in the board gaming industry, I think, are making an impact. So I want to make sure I note that. The other thing, I'm hoping you can provide a little bit of education for people on maybe what the most challenging part, because you mentioned earlier, with Kickstarter has been for you, because you've been doing it, but it sounds like you are constantly learning on maybe the best ways to handle Kickstarter and the challenges you might face. But I feel like a lot of people still think, oh, I can go onto Kickstarter and get a game produced or something. And it's just not that simple. Nothing is that simple from everyone I've talked to so far.
Kickstarter is a beast. It's really interesting because, yes, I think less so now. But when we started out like 6 or 7 years ago, everybody thought, well, I want to make this. I'll just bring it as a Kickstarter. People will give me money and I'll make the thing. And that first campaign that we had for Food Fighters, it took us an entire month to raise $26,000 Canadian, which, 7 years ago for a company who had not been heard of, and also it was a 2-player family game. Like, who makes 2-player family games? It was a challenge. It was a really, really huge challenge. And knowing what I know now, I probably never should have done that. I never should have started off that way. If I wanted to do it, I shouldn't have thought to myself, I want to make 2,000 copies of a game. I should have thought to myself, I want to see if I can make this game and put it up for, like, I don't know, $5,000 and see if we could get funded. And you know what? We probably would have been funded in a few days, and that would have been great, and we would have moved on with our lives. I learned so much from that campaign that I kind of felt like I needed to try it again. The same thing happened with our second campaign. Our second campaign was for Problem Picnic, and it was a Scott Alms game. And, we thought to ourselves, oh, Scott Alms, everybody knows him, and we'll bring it to Kickstarter. And it's just, it turned out it was basically exactly the same campaign. People were excited about it. I think we had like 500 backers or something around there, which still is really great for a tiny company to get 500 backers. Wonderful. And then I went back for more punishment. I sort of became addicted to Kickstarter, and maybe that feeling of horrifying terror right before it to it, like sort of coasting in the middle to funding by the end of it. And the thing that I can say about it is, if it's your passion and it's the thing that you must do in your life, do it. But don't do it until you know what you're getting yourself into. And if you are bringing a game, I think it's probably different within other industries, but if you are bringing a game to Kickstarter, I think spending a lot of time getting an audience together, getting people to play your game, getting people excited about it, tweeting about it twice a day, having other people share pictures for a long time. And what I mean by long time is not like a couple weeks before your campaign starts. I'm talking like a year. Have it on the circuit for a year. Play it with every single person you can play it with. Have them share their scores. Take pictures of what the table looked like after you finished playing, or, what it looked like before you started and then what it looked like after you finished, and just build your audience. And if you could start with people who are ready and excited about your game, then you're going to fund and you'll be making a game. But don't fool yourself into thinking, I have the next $1 million idea, which is what everybody thinks, and I'll just put it up and then I'll get funded and then I'll be a millionaire and everybody's going to want my game. The reality is, it doesn't really matter how good your game is. It has to be good, but it doesn't matter how good your game is. If you don't have all of the other stuff surrounding it, you will not be successful.
Not to mention, there's just so many. I was looking at Board Game Geek the other day, and I think it was games coming out in March and mid-April, and there's 155 games. It's a crowded space right now. So your game's not only got to be good, you need an audience, like you said, who actually has an interest in potentially buying the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, you're in social media, you know this. when one person likes something and they tell somebody else about it, then two people know about it, and then those people tell people about it, and just, it blossoms, and it's really, really beautiful. A very good example of this is something that happened today, which was really nice. We announced, for our strategy line of games, we announced a new game called Fall of the Mountain King, coming to Kickstarter June 1st. We announced this, and it's a prequel to a game that we've already published, and it's been very well received. Did very, very nicely in Kickstarter from my perspective, and it's still going very, very well in retail. And so we announced this prequel, and I have several thousand, many thousand people on our newsletter, and so it's really easy to just send a newsletter out to those people. But I shared some stuff on social media as well, and it's really amazing how many people are sharing and getting excited and retweeting and even tweeting on their own without being provoked to do it, and saying, I heard that this is happening. Who else is excited about it? And that's the kind of thing, the momentum you want to see happening before a Kickstarter campaign happens, because all of those people who you touched even just a little bit on that day that you announced it is expecting more information from you, and they're going to continue to share things. And as we get closer, that gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And hopefully by the time we get to Kickstarter, we'll be all set to fund in the first day, because who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves to put the, I always laugh because everyone likes to put the funded in 4 hours or whatever it might be. And nothing wrong with that. But there's certainly, I can only imagine the joy that goes into that. I have to say, first and foremost, for everyone, I'll be happy once the Kickstarter goes live. I'll make sure that link is also available in this video. So if you're watching this when that Kickstarter is live, we'll make sure a link is there and you can see it. Additionally, I want to ask you one last really important question, and you've given some fantastic advice about Kickstarter, but to those designers and illustrators and artists who want to get into this industry or design a game, what's the kind of advice that you give to those people? You've shared, by the way, I should note, if you're tuning into this late, you shared some really great advice about kind of your process and what you see. But I mean, just as a general set of advice to those people, what would you say?
Well, for the artists out there, I would say the best thing to do is share your artwork. Make it accessible. So there is a really great place that I go to look for artists called ArtStation. And if you don't know what it is, it's just like a database of all of these different artists and 3D illustrators and designers and all different sorts of art in one space. And you can look up a genre, or you can look up a media or whatever, and you can look up an artist, and there you can find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of the type of art that of artists that do the type of art that you're looking for. But also, I have been very good at interacting with artists who cold call me. I get emails all the time, and I think that's great. I mean, you're putting yourself out there. Hopefully the style of art that publisher is looking for. If you think you're that person, email them, talk to them, say, I'm happy to give you my rates, or here's my website, take a look at it. I don't think that there's an artist that has emailed me that I haven't checked out their stuff, every single one of them. It's wonderful when they do that, and they put themselves out there. For designers, the one thing I can tell you is it's really, really important to know what a publisher is looking for. It's really, really, really important to know. And even though you think you have the best game in the world, and you could have the best game in the world, please make sure that you do some homework before you submit your game or introduce yourself. It's really important to do that. I've had lots of submissions. The games are fantastic. They're just not for us. And it's not fun as a publisher to say, not for us. I'm sorry. Maybe somebody else will like. It's not fun for me to say that I want to publish everybody's games. So that's from a publisher's perspective. From a designer perspective, make sure people play your game without you there. Give them the rules or teach them, fine, but go away. Let your game be played without you telling them what the optimal moves are, because they're going to find issues no matter what. Even if you think your game is perfect, you're going to find issues that need to be dealt with before you do submit them to a publisher. So as a designer, I think that's really important. Play as much as you possibly can. And also, I had mentioned the game Food Fighters that we had earlier. Yeah, it was very, very nice that all of our friends and family loved this game Shoe Tree, but we kind of knew it wasn't going to work. If you have a feeling about your game that it doesn't belong in a certain place, then try to do something about that. Don't try to force a square peg into a round hole, or whatever that saying is. I think that's it.
Yeah, there is really a trust here. You have to trust some instinct, I can imagine. And one of the things that you said that stands out to me really is the idea of knowing who you're sending the game to, because just not that this would happen, but if someone sent Gloomhaven to you, I mean, let's be real. You would immediately be saying, no, it doesn't fit.
and quite honestly, as a gamer, I'll play that game, but as a publisher, I don't want to play that game. That's not that's not the level of game that I'm willing to take the time to spend too much time looking at as a publisher for Kids Table.
Yes,
it is. I can't even wrap my head around why somebody would try to do that, but people do. People send me stuff, which really surprises me.
Well, like you said, you get sent a lot of stuff throughout the year, and I know that you do get plenty of emails. And on top of that, being a teacher, which is just so important. So I want to thank you for taking time tonight to hang out with me here on the Creators Corner and just share some of your insights. I know that there's some people who I've talked to after watching these, and they've just told me that the insights from those who are doing things that they want to do have meant a lot. So I want to thank you for providing that to the audience here tonight.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. That was fun.
My pleasure. And for everyone else who is here or watching later, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. As I have noted earlier this week, we're going to have some great conversations coming up, some more to be announced, but one of the ones coming up in April is going to be Danny Lowe from Pandasaurus Games. So hopefully you can tune in to that one. That is going to be on April 8th at 8:30 p.m. But I've got some other great people to announce, and they'll be coming soon. So mark that one though, because I'm looking very forward to that one in particular. Danny is wonderful. So
me too.
So yeah, so there you go. There you've got a double re-endorsement. There's a double endorsement there. So now you got to mark it. Go ahead, check out the channels. We got some more things coming up, and I want to take a moment tonight also to encourage you to please go on YouTube, search Board Game Dad. I do a lot of videos with Board Game Dad. For some reason, the man only has 54 subscribers, but he does these videos about the most random holidays, like it was Purple Day, and I'm blown away. The stuff he's covering is just so cool and so unique in terms of YouTube creators for board games right now. So please go give him a sub. He deserves it. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for tuning in. Thanks for coming aboard the Tabletop Express, and I'll see you all very, very soon.